Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I have a first impressions to do for you on this wonderful, beautiful little knife. This is the CKF Satori 2.0. The 2.0 on this Satori means that it is the little one. There are two versions of this knife. There's a very large one, and there's this guy, which is the little one. Now, this knife only really seems little if you're familiar with how big the not 2.0 is, because this knife still has about a 3.5-inch blade. I'm not positive exactly if I got that length right, but this to me is a proper primary carry knife. It's not certainly one of the biggest ones that I have, but it is a knife that I carry front right pocket as a primary, which means usually for me a knife that's going to make it in that spot is going to be at least 3.25 inches in blade length, and I'm going to feel confident in its ergos and its abilities that if there's a serious task in front of me that I have to use my knife to do, that I'm not going to find my knife lacking in that position. And there is an element also of self-defense mindfulness, that I want to feel confident if I do ever need to use a knife to defend myself, that it's a knife that I'm comfortable carrying there for that purpose. And this one fits there. So this one is the little guy, but the big guy is much bigger. So even though this is average size knife for Jake, this is small knife for Satori. It is the little one for sure. So I just picked this knife up. If you didn't see the unboxing, I bought it from my buddy Sam, who I've purchased a number of knives from at this point. I shouldn't say knives. A number of knives from at this point, and I think I've sold him some knives. We've traded. I've loaned him knives. He's loaned me knives. This Sabenza that I borrowed for my week-long carry challenge was from Sam. He's a good buddy, and we've known each other in the online knife world for years now, and I appreciate him letting me get this from him, because they're not supremely easy to come by from what I've gathered. I've never frankly gotten one, mostly because they're a little bit cost prohibitive. This is an expensive knife. So this is one of those knives that the first time I saw a Rassenti Satori, I wanted it, and I wanted it bad. It's just, to me, gorgeous. It has a certain aesthetic about it that really speaks to me. And I remember seeing a photo of one of the customs years ago and thinking I need that. And ever since then, even seeing these production versions, all of them, I've just really, really wanted one. So I'm stoked that the timing was finally right, and now I have one, and it's real. Now, I mentioned in my unboxing that it was a dangerous thing. Whenever I get expectations that high of a knife, I'm a little bit wary, because it's happened before, and I'm sure it'll happen again, that when I get a piece of gear that I have really high expectations of, it's setting it up for failure a little bit. If it falls short of that, even if it's great, if it's short of what it was built up to be in my mind, then I just don't love it. I'm happy to report this is every bit what I wanted it to be and what I built it up to be in my head. I am not at all dissatisfied so far with this knife. In fact, I just... I don't know, I can't get enough of it. So, this one is made by CKF. This is my first personal CKF. I had handled a few in the past, but never owned one. And so this is my first experience with them. CKF, or Custom Knife Factory, is out of Russia. I'm not sure who they have build their knives or whether they do it there in Russia. I'm hazy on how that company operates. I know that here in the States, typically, if you're ordering one of their knives, you go through the site From Russia with Knives, I think it's called. I've been on that site a bunch of times. I've been close to buying things a handful of times, but I've never pulled the trigger. So I haven't experienced ordering from them. I don't know if they have somebody in the U.S. who's distributing to the U.S. I think they do. Anyways, this is my first experience with them, and I bought it secondary. So I can only speak to the quality of the knife itself and how it's built, not to what it's like to buy from them. Although the packaging I can speak to. If you watch the unboxing, it comes in a really nice pouch. They send it with extra set of hardware and clip and bearings, and a patch and a sticker. It's really nice how much comes with it, so I like that. yesterday I put the tiniest little scuff on the clip. I was climbing around on some rocks getting photos and taking some B-roll shots and stuff, and while I was climbing around I had this knife in my pocket as I was shooting some clips of another knife, and I sat down and I just kind of brushed up against a rock, and it put, frankly, a tiny scuff in this clip. I don't know if you'll even really be able to see it, but it was nice to know, hey, in that pouch at home I've got another one of these clips just sitting there for it. So if I get this clip all roughed up at some point, then I have a backup just laying around, which is great. So yeah, their packaging is nice, and the extras that it comes with. Now, first impressions wise, let's start by saying I've carried this knife for a little over a whole day. I carried it all day yesterday, I carried it this morning. I've played with it virtually non-stop. It spent as much time out of my pocket in my hand fidgeting as it has in my pocket these last day and a half that I've carried it, and I just love to play with the knife. It has an absolutely phenomenal action that is addicting. It does the things that I like in an action. With the flipper, it deploys reliably, it is buttery smooth. Closing is absolutely just glassy smooth and drop shutty and phenomenal. It is silky. It also has these fullers machined into the blade on both sides, so I really like to middle finger flick it. I can do it with my middle finger kind of nail, or I can even just use kind of the pad of my finger and depress against there and flick it out that way. Any way that I open this knife, it is pleasurable to do so, and every time I close the knife, it's so much fun. So deployment methods are fantastic. The action itself, both in opening and closing, it's just really, really good. The one thing that feels a little different about it to me than other knives that are this smooth, the detent feels just a hair kind of lighter, maybe less crisp, like it's less of a snap as that detent itself actually pushes out of the hole. But as you can see, it's still deploying absolutely reliably. I haven't had a failure yet on it, and so it just has a little bit of a different feel to it than like smooth Riat knives or my Koenig Arius, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It just feels different, which makes sense. It comes from a different company. So yeah, let's talk ergos. Action we've just gone over. I'm going a little out of order here compared to how I normally do it, but I don't necessarily have like an order anyways. We'll talk about carry, and we'll talk about cutting performance. So action, just really good. Ergos. This knife, for my hand, is really good. One of the things that worried me the most before having it in hand was whether the ergos were going to agree with me. Because if ergos don't agree with me, then I generally don't like a knife. It's rare that a knife is good enough in other ways that I can forgive it sucking in my hand. This, however, for my medium-sized men's glove hands, extra medium because I fill them out real good, it feels really good. The handle is a little bit kind of slender this way, but the notch up here, or choil, groove, whatever you want to call it, is just excellent for the size of my pointer finger. And then this curve back here matched with the curve here for it to rest into my palm, and the fact that it's an integral, so that curve feels really pleasant. The fact that everything is machined down very nicely, it's really good in my hand. Like, really good. Now, ergos are different for everybody, so that doesn't mean it's going to be fantastic for everyone who picks it up. But for my hands, I love it. It's really, really good ergonomically. In a reverse grip, it's literally every bit as good. This knife feels excellent in a reverse grip. I love in a reverse grip when I've got a nice spot to put my thumb, and it's a perfect spot to wrap my thumb around the top. It just feels really good and like indexed for a reverse grip. Saber grip is excellent. Hammer grip is excellent. Draw cut works. Reverse grip draw cut, probably the least comfortable of them, but the least likely grip that I'll use, so that's fine. And it's still doable. It's phenomenal in my hand. The fact that it's an integral as well, there's a certain feel to integrals that you just don't get out of non-integral knives. it just provides this kind of, I don't know, sturdiness in hand. Even the way that the action feels on the knife feels a little bit enhanced because it's an integral to me. I don't know, they inherently feel a little bit classy, a little bit higher end, and the way that it feels in my palm, where this kind of section of my hand right here is pressing in against it, it just feels great. I appreciate that this is an integral because it feels special. Yeah, so ergos are an absolute win. Action we already talked about. Let's talk about carry. Now, this pocket clip is a milled titanium pocket clip, as you'd kind of expect on a knife like this. It is not super deep carry. Let's see if I can show you. It ends right about there. So you have about that much knife realistically sticking out of your pocket. It is a gorgeous piece of knife to have sticking out of your pocket. It looks really cool to me, so that helps. I do prefer deep carry clips. I've been open about that all along. Anytime I talk about pocket clips, my preference is deep carry. But as titanium milled pocket clips go, this one looks pretty minimalist and handsome, and it goes in and out of pocket smoothly and nicely for me. I have the right amount of retention, and it's been a very good pocket clip. On top of that, the feel of this knife in pocket, because it's this nice smooth titanium everywhere, it's got this little bit of a bulge here, which feels kind of good in hand, but I don't frankly really notice in pocket. The knife just has this nice slim sensation to it in pocket, and it's very comfortable. The profile isn't too fat this way. It feels quite good. And the flipper tab is really minimalist. It's not poking anything in my pocket. It just works in pocket. This knife is really comfortable to carry. The knife in my collection that's like most comparable to this knife, I feel, price point, materials, all that, is my Koenig Arius. And this is more comfortable in the pocket, for sure, than my Koenig Arius. And I love carrying the Arius. This, as like dressy, fancy, cool, high-end knives go with milled titanium pocket clips, it's like really good in pocket. It's interesting that a knife, this isn't super lightweight, it's not overly heavy either, but on an integral titanium handle and with a nice thick blade stock, there's only so light you can be. For its weight and its size and all that, it's really surprised me how much I can almost forget that it's in pocket. Like, it's just the smoothness here and where it like sits against my body, and yeah, I think a lot of it is the smoothness and the way these corners are all knocked down. I don't know, it's really, really good in pocket so far. So carry's good, action is good, ergos are good. Let's talk cutting performance. So this blade not only looks, in my opinion, like one of the most gorgeous blades I've ever seen on a folding knife, but I have found that it's not all bark. It actually has some bite as well. So let's start kind of at the tip. I really like that there's this swedge and then the flat grind on this kind of dramatic Japanese tanto we've got here. So flat grind tanto with a swedge, and you've got this piercing tip that just looks menacing, but is actually fantastic for piercing. It is really, really good. And then the fact that they've done a compound grind, and now we get a hollow back here. I think it's a hollow. Yeah, it's got a little bit of curve to it. It's not a dramatic, like really deep hollow, but it is a hollow grind. So the fact that we've got this hollow grind here that comes up a little taller, this knife is so much thinner behind the edge than I was expecting it to be. I had never handled one of these. I'd only seen them in photos before I got one, right? And so I just kind of assumed that with a blade that looked as wild as this does, like it's just kind of like lurching forward in this crazy tanto with a little bit of a recurve down here, I thought it was going to be like pretty thick and obtuse and just not great at cutting. But what I've found is I haven't done a ton of cutting with this. Like I said, I've only carried it for a day so far, but I've done a bit. I've opened some boxes, I've processed that cardboard for the dumpster, and yeah, I haven't done anything crazy with it. I did do 2 zip ties as well that were in one of the packages I opened, so I've done a little bit for a day. That's solid day's use for me on an EDC knife. The tip and the way I'm able to use it is really, really good. It's pretty thick behind the edge at the tip, which for me, like the tip of my knife, I have to have a precise enough actual point on it to like get into kind of tighter spaces and make incisions and stuff like that. But then I don't want it necessarily to be super dainty either, because I do pop a lot of zip ties. And so on this knife, the fact that it's a little thick up here and I can kind of get it into the zip tie, if you will, and then torque the knife to pop it, worked really well. And then the fact that I've got this nice, really thin geometry back here in this kind of recurved section, although it's not a dramatic recurve, it's almost straight. For like pushing through cardboard and stuff, it just worked really, really well. So I like the cutting performance so far. It's not like the best cutter I've ever experienced, for sure. I've got thinner knives, slicier knives, full flat grinds that are better for a lot of the stuff that I do at the end of the day. But for this being as attractive and kind of designed as it is and looking like it does, I'm just floored by how good it actually performs. I'm really quite pleased with it. So the cutting is very good, the ergos are very good, the action is phenomenal, the carry is excellent. I'm thrilled with this knife so far. So I'm going to be spending at least a week with it, carrying it. It's probably going to be hard to kick out of my pocket for a little while, so I'm going to carry it a whole lot and use it quite a bit and just really feel it out before doing my full review, so that'll come. And then after I do my full review, I think I'm also probably going to do kind of a head-to-head comparison between this knife and my Koenig Arius. My Arius right now is loaned out to my buddy Lefty EDC. Shout out to him. So once it gets back from him, I'll do that comparison. Not that he needs to rush with it or anything, but once that's back, I think this would be a fun comparison to do with that knife, because the Arius is my favorite knife in my collection. I've been saying that as long as I've had my current Arius, and it's one of my favorite knives ever built. I just adore the thing. And this knife is a contender. It's really, really good, and I'm very, very pleased with it. So there you have it. That'll be my first impressions on the CKF Satori 2.0, an M390 integral titanium handle, and yeah, this is a sweet knife. Not only sweet looking, but so far sweet to use as well. Alright guys, thanks so much. I'll see you on the next one.